enough of that silly business. Right, welcome back. Hopefully we're streaming all right. I still have a few difficulties getting this stuff going. So we'll see how we go. So, look, there's a few things for us to talk about today. So we'll go through all of that. As usual, we'll have a little bit of a demo time as well, showing off the current state of the game. And then open up to any questions, answers for those that are connected and involved in the chat. We'll kind of see how we go from there. Sorry, I accidentally opened up the stream and it was playing back to me. So yeah, there's a lot to get through. So let's get it going. Right. So over to we're not there yet. It's not going properly. Let's try this again. And over to our presentation. I think it's showing properly. Let's see if this goes. Excuse me. Where is my screen gone? There we go. Oh, no. I don't think that's showing up properly. 1 second, sorry. Yeah, this is definitely not showing up properly. 1 second. Where has my presentation gone? You know what? I'll check the stream again just to see where we're at. But yeah, it's showing the wrong screen. Like I said, I had a few difficulties to get this going properly. Let's try this again. Presentation. Window capture. Okay. Now we're where we should be. Let's see how we go with that one. And I've lost it again. I've got to figure out a better way for this for sure. Okay, let's see if this works. So let's give a quick progress update on everything we've been working through over the past few months. It's been rather substantial, so we'll go through that. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, but I can't see the chat at the moment, so I'll come back to that sort of halfway through the update or whatever before we do the demo, and then there'll be another opportunity for me to answer questions sort of towards the end. So quick progress update first. So I've updated the roadmap as per usual. I do that almost on a monthly basis. Basically, ticking off the things that we've already completed in terms of game features, as well as an updated timeline for the upcoming features. So, unfortunately, launch continues to get pushed out, but that window of potential delivery, as well as sort of the features between now and delivery, continues to get shorter and shorter. So, as I mentioned on the roadmap page, it's quite hard for me to sort of guess exactly when we're going to deliver. But, what I do have a good understanding and feeling of is sort of where we're at in terms of the game's development and what's left to do. And so, as that sort of scope of work continues to shrink, the accuracy in which I can, predict when we'll actually be able to launch becomes, I guess, sort of more and more accurate. But, it's definitely looking very possible in 2026. I'm sort of aiming at the moment for mid-2026. Of course, that can blow out. As the last few years have shown, real life can really get in the way of this project, being obviously less priority than family and also, my day-to-day job. Which is significant. But yeah, we continue to make good progress. And the roadmap's been updated to reflect that. So next then is pre-alpha stage 2 has now completed. So we had, I think, 20 testers involved this time. We had 10 invites sent out last time, but I think only about 3 or 4 testers actually got involved. This time substantially more were involved. And when I say substantially more, it's still a small pool of players, but it's a lot more than we had previously. So I think all in all, we had about 13 or 14 testers actually test the game. And of those 13, 14, I think 7 or 8 actually reported, various bugs and issues, gave a lot of feedback, some suggestions. So thank you very much to those testers that were involved. It's very much appreciated. Without your input, the game wouldn't be able to be as polished and stable as it is already, based on the fundamental work that we've already done. And so that'll continue. So, phase 3, hopefully by end of this year. But definitely by early 2026. And that'll essentially be a conclusion of the game fundamentals, meaning that you'll be able to do infrastructure, research and development, spacecraft production, and colonization. So that's what we're aiming for with the next test phase, which is basically, a complete game in terms of the very basics. But then obviously we've got a fair bit to do beyond that, which is mostly content and then sort of the features around the periphery, social features and that sort of stuff. Next, we also did, I should say, I wouldn't say a substantial UI rework, but there's definitely some feedback that came in through the previous test phase, where a couple of the testers basically said that the UI kind of felt a bit cramped, a bit, so we say claustrophobic, and even on bigger screens, right? So I made a decision. So 1 second, let me change my heater here. It's getting a bit cold in here. I made a decision early on to sort of focus the UI at 1080 scale. And the reason for that is because 1080p is basically majority resolution for, when I say, let me reword that, a resolution that majority of PC gamers use, including Mac as well. My Mac's on 1440, my MacBook Pro, but things kind of feel a bit funny sometimes at 1440 on MacBook Pro. So I aimed for 1080. Basically what that meant, it superficially sort of restricted the UI to a small size, and that meant that on particularly larger screens, say on my 27-inch or bigger, the game kind of felt as like, why is there sort of all this empty space around? So based on feedback, I sort of blew that up a little bit, not too much, but more importantly, actually made the sort of core screens and sort of where your planets and colonies are shown a lot bigger, and then sort of had these overlays on top of that. And I think it was really good feedback because despite my initial intentions, I think that was a better approach, sort of what we've ended up with. And it feels more spacey, if that makes sense. It just feels more spacious. It feels like you're kind of moving a bit more through the galaxy when you're working on your colonies and that sort of stuff. And I think that overall that's a net positive, right? It's just a better sort of player experience in the end. Research and technology has now been completed. And what I mean by that is basically the underlying game mechanics and the features to support it. There's still a fair bit of content to add there because what players have been playing with is basically just the first era of technologies. Although they could research quite a few more technologies beyond the first era, but it didn't have any gameplay impact for the test phase, and that'll change definitely by the third test phase. But what's really exciting about this is that now players can research and develop the technology for their empires very quickly to get to a point where they can start, expanding their colonies, which is the next step. Next then, okay, so let's talk about those next steps. So, like I said, leading into the next test phase, we want to get spacecraft production in place. And for the next test phase, that'll be fairly basic again. So you may be able to create some fighters and some cruisers or whatever. But most importantly, you'll be able to create probes and satellites, as well as colonization craft. So the reason why we won't focus too much on combat craft, although you'll probably be able to build them just for test purposes, is that combat won't be in place. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But combat will likely be one of the last things that we develop. So we'll get basically the empire growth and management aspect out. So let's say sort of the PvE aspect. And then after that, we'll start working on the combat side of things, which I am very excited to kind of get to, but it's a long ways off yet. And the reason why is because, I've been working on the game mechanics for the combat system for a very long time, but really been putting a lot of effort into it basically since the project officially launched in 2023. That's just because I really like space combat. I think it's super cool. I think it's super interesting. Lots of different weapon types and rules there to go along with that. So yeah, I'm very excited to kind of get to that piece. Next is also observation. So I don't know if I've seen this in other space games of this nature. It might exist. I just don't know. But the idea here is that in the previous test phase, players are able to build their observatory, but they couldn't do anything with it. It was just a sort of a requirement to get to other technologies and other structures that you could build. But the long game for the observatory is that you'll be able to observe star systems, or solar systems, I should say. And what that results in is you being able to see how many planets are in the system, like what the kind of star it is, what's the likely representation of resources that you'll find in that system. So for example, if you're looking for a particular rare resource, you might start pointing your observatory at these different systems, trying to see or get clues of that resource particular system. So I can't show anything on that just yet. Jun and I are still working on that working on that piece. But basically, it'll give you an estimate of the resources that are in that system within a sort of a range. So if you see that resource presented as part of the observatory reports that you'll get, then it could be a candidate for you to start setting up a colony there. So for example, if you're looking for polonium or some other rare resource, and you see that sort of show up in your report, it might be a system that you might want to colonize. But the observatory is just the first step in sort of looking for good colony candidates. So it gives you, sort of rough estimates in regards to what's in the solar system, what planets are there, asteroid belt, how many asteroids are there, that sort of thing. But you still need to do the hard work of sort of finding out where those resources actually are. So if you think about, when we point telescopes into deep space and we sort of get back, I think it's called spectrography. I can't remember the exact term of it. I know that's not quite right. We get these sort of spectrograms back of stars, and it sort of shows us the makeup of those stars and other things. You can think that it's a similar sort of approach to how the observatory functions within Halcyon Online. So it gives you a rough estimate. It sort of gives you a guiding light in regards to where to go, and then you start sending out your probes and go from there. Next after that is colonisation. So once we've wrapped up observation, which we hopefully should have wrapped up in the next few weeks, then we have to start working on colonisation. And before we can get to colonisation, we have to do spacecraft production, because you have to be able to create colonisation craft. So once we've got that in place, then basically, it's sort of off to the races then. So, once colonisation is done, we'll open up the next test phase, and then players will start to actually, colonize different planets, asteroids, that sort of thing. And really start to expand their empires, which has been relatively limited over the last few test phases. So I just talked about that. So the next pre-alpha stage 3 test. So with the current timelines and sort of how things are going at the moment, was it mid-August now? August 17th. My guess is mid to late September. We could be ready for pre-alpha stage 3 tests. It just depends on how much time we both have available to sort of wrap up those other features. But more likely, it's probably early October for the next test phase. And that test phase, I think, will be open for a while, so probably until the end of the year. And again, we'll expand the player base and invite more testers. So we'll probably aim for about 40 to 50 testers for this next test round, to really start collecting a lot of feedback in regards to colonization, how that whole process works, what does era 1 and the second era sort of feel like to players. Does it feel good? Does it feel laborious and annoying? That sort of stuff. We really value that sort of feedback. And then after that, we've then got sort of the shall we say, end game features, or more important features. More interesting features. So aspirations, as it currently stands, is engagements and trade contracts. So these are sort of features beyond colonization. So engagements means space combat, essentially. So engaging with other players, as well as hopefully PvE type missions and that sort of stuff as well. So engaging NPC type factions, and trade. So trade contracts is just one of the various features that you'll be able to work with to set up trade. So trade contracts is essentially setting up an agreement with another player, and you are bound to that agreement. So let's say, for example, some player has some polonium, and maybe you have some other rare resource that you want to get, or maybe you just need a heap of materials for a while. Then you set up a trade agreement with them, and then once that's in place, you're basically locked in for however long it is that you agree to. So let's say, for example, you want to have a trade contract in place for a week. You're both signed into that contract, and there's no getting out of that, basically. So you need to be very sure and confident about what you're doing with your trade contracts, because you could get in your own way, as in a matter of speaking. And the reason for that is because of the relatively unique resource system that Halcyon Online has in place. So, unlike other games like O-Game or other ones, where you're basically hoarding all of these resources and it just keeps accumulating. In Halcyon Online, it doesn't work like that. So it's sort of closer to games like Civilization, whereby you have a set value of, say, trying to think of some of the ones there. So say like food or whatever in Civilization, have a small number of 1 or 2 or 3. You've got a small population. So in Halcyon Online, we use a similar sort of approach. So as you're developing your resources, such as energy and materials and polonium and other things, that's a small number that goes up. And you basically have to trade away some of that value to another player, or even to like friends or whatever. If you've got friends that you're playing with, you want to sort of give them some resources. And let's say for example, you've got 20 12 materials and you sort of want maybe you want some energy or some polonium, whatever. Let's say you've agreed to send 3 of whatever value to the other player. That value will be docked from your output and show up in your resource report for that particular colony. And similarly for the other player. So there'll be plus on whatever you've given them and then negative on the stuff that they're sending across. And that trade contract is in place for as long as you've both agreed to, right? And generally speaking, I think players will want to do this for particular projects. Like maybe they've got a big project that may be a bit short of resources and might be a bit difficult to get those resources. So then they set up those trade contracts. Similarly, you can also do this with yourself. So setting up trade contracts, or you sort of calling it more so cargo missions. It's a little bit different for working with between players, but if you're doing it between colonies, right, you're just sort of sending resources back and forth. So setting up those trade lanes or trade contracts to yourself is also possible. Maybe you've got a colony that's just very rich in some rare resource, and you want to send it back to another colony that's doing spacecraft production or something else. Then you can absolutely do that, right, for as long as you need. Next, so we talked a little bit earlier about the sort of alpha tests. So the current test phases have sort of been the pre-alphas, and the reason why I call them pre-alphas is because it's not a complete game yet, right? It's missing a lot of features, and so we're basically testing sort of a set of features at every stage and a growing set of features. But in 2026, hopefully early 26, and when I say early, I'm saying basically before sort of April, May next year, is that we should have most of the core features in place. And so what that means is that we can then start doing a proper alpha test. So testing all of the features in the game and starting to respond to that feedback. And the alpha test will probably be open for quite some time again because there's going to be a lot of stuff to test. There's probably going to be new bugs and new things that come out of that. Next is the social features. So, I started a poll a little while ago. Actually, before I go further, let me just check sort of the stream and see where we're at. See if there's any questions or anything like that first. Excusez-moi. Oh no, I've got this has failed on me again. Sorry, 1 second. Apologies. Let's go to this. Basically, I have to, because I haven't figured out how to embed the chat yet, I have to basically go to the stream and then hopefully stop the various sound stuff coming through and answer it. So, okay, cool. So there's a few comments there from Addy. So, super keen for the game. Sounds good. Sorry, Addy, I'm not sure exactly what we're referring to there with that sounds good, so I apologize. Hopefully for the next stream I can get chat embedded and we can go through that together. All right, so let's get back to where we were. So, social features. So let's touch on this a little bit. I'll talk on this a little bit. So, beyond sort of the stuff that you would tend to expect with social features in this type of game, I want to touch on some concepts within Halcyon Online, which are certainly not unique, but I think Halcyon Online may be taking just a little bit of a different approach, as it has with a few other of its features. So the first thing I want to talk about is there's several layers of, shall we say, social groupings, right? So you have alliances. So actually, let's start right at the start. So you have factions, right? So factions, what's planned at the moment is we have 3 factions. So we've got the human faction, the Durok, which I've talked about before. So if you want to sort of know about them, you can check out my other devlogs, as well as the Nephim. And Nephim is the faction that I'm personally most interested in playing, but they're a ways off yet. So they're the 3 factions planned so far. Definitely want to do more in the future, but they're the 3 we've got on the, so we say, the sort of future roadmap for the time being. Next, we have alliances, and this is a little bit different from what you might expect from other games. So alliances are actually sort of a grouping of. It's kind of hard to tell. It's hard to say. It's not like guilds. It's not like anything like that, because we'll get to that in a minute. But alliances are basically a faction. What am I trying to say here? Let's put it this way. Humans, the Durok, and the Nephim are races. And then the alliances are essentially factions within the game. So these are factions that you can build reputation with. And as a result of building up that reputation with them through missions and that sort of thing, is unlock special rewards. And those rewards can come through resources or special blueprints, whatever, for your spacecraft, that sort of thing. Then you've got syndicates. So syndicates are basically your guilds and alliances from other games. And syndicates are essentially a sort of a small grouping of players. And when I say small, I don't know what that number looks like yet, but there will certainly be a hard limit of how many players you can have in a syndicate. What that number looks like yet, I don't know. It totally depends on the player base for Halcyon Online. And the reason why I want a hard cap on that is because basically I don't want a single syndicate just sort of taking over a galaxy, right? I mean, they can do that if they're playing well with the right players. They will organize that sort of thing. But I don't want it being from the fact that they've just like soaked up 75% of the player base. I don't want to see that in the game, because it makes the say syndicate wars and that sort of stuff that you might have between syndicates relatively meaningless if that happens. Or sort of like, why bother? The syndicate has most of the player base. Why would we bother with that? So there will certainly be a hard limit on that. But syndicates will support the ability for players to join, create them. Syndicates will also have their own homeworld. So players have their own homeworlds, but then syndicates will be able to set their homeworld. And that homeworld provides benefits both to the syndicate and the players within that syndicate. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. And then you've also got things like being able to trade with the syndicate and back. So, syndicates can obtain resources and provide them to players just like a player would. And the goal here, although I haven't fleshed out all that much yet, is that syndicates will, effectively have some sort of tax on players, and that tax can be specified by the syndicate. So if they're looking for particular resources, maybe they're wanting to set up, big projects like a Dyson sphere, which does require quite a few players to do, then they might just simply ask players to provide the resources that they need to be able to build that project, right? And on that note, Dyson spheres can be created by players without being in a syndicate. It just requires organization and cooperation to be able to do that. And syndicates are obviously probably just the easiest way to arrange that, right? You get everybody on board, everybody provides resources that they need, and then the syndicate itself creates the Dyson sphere for the players to be able to utilize. And then beyond syndicates, you've also got things like your usual social features, like friends, being able to message players, that sort of stuff. One thing I'm unsure about is things like having like a forum or a bulletin board for syndicates so that they can post things within game. I'm not against it. It's just that we've got applications like Discord for syndicates, which do everything I'd probably want to do in Halcyon Online, but a lot better, and a lot of control regarding permissions and setup, different forums, threaded systems, that sort of thing. Building all of those features, as you might imagine, is quite a bit of work. So if it becomes something that syndicates feel that they need, or even like an announcements board, then fine, we can build that sort of thing. But I think we'll probably leave that for a while. So what will generally happen is that players will talk to one another through messaging, which will be a sort of live chat system that we'll build for Halcyon Online. And then beyond that, if sort of a syndicate recruits somebody to sort of join the syndicate, then they join the Discord and they can organize through there things that they want to do. But that's an aside from the organizational features that you'll need to set up within the syndicate. So you're setting up taxing and resource collection, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, we have to build that into the game. So that's it around syndicates for the time being. We'll talk about a lot more about that in the future. But yeah, so messaging and adding friends and all that sort of stuff will be built in, and will probably be a pretty standard approach. And as you might imagine, we'll have all the features implemented as well, so that if you don't want to hear from players that you don't know, then you can do that. That obviously means that cuts you off from players that might want to reach out to you for trade contracts, whatever. But that's totally up to you. It's within your control. So you can accept messages, you can block them, block players from being able to message you. That's what, if it's a particularly toxic player that's just annoying you, block them. There's no need for that. You can also obviously report them and do all this. So all the usual stuff you'd expect, with a little bit of Halcyon Online seasoning on top. Next one there is we've got the closed beta early to mid 2026. So I'm leaning sort of more towards mid 2026 once we've got all the features in place and after the alpha is done. Once the alpha is finished and we've resolved all the bugs, I think we'll be looking at closed beta not long after that, within months. Right? So if we presume optimistically that the alpha will be launched sometime in April to May, then hopefully the closed beta is in everybody's hands around June, July in 2026. And then, who knows? We'll go from there. So one of the things I'm most concerned about, because the alpha test, it's hard to test with very few players, is scaling. So making sure that the game is actually performing the way we need it to with a lot of players. Ideally, Halcyon Online has something like 10,000 players. I know that's probably a bit of a pie in the sky objective. I'd like to have a lot more than that. But even at 10,000 players on a single server, it's probably going to be pretty heavy on the server, and I'm already looking at alternative ways of supporting a large player base. So, for example, players have asked for potentially regional servers. So, maybe in Europe, maybe in the Americas, maybe in Oceania, the Asian Pacific region, that sort of thing. Then we could definitely do that. And I've been thinking about the architecture, how to support that, because the game can't currently support that sort of thing. But something I've wanted to do basically since day one. It's just that it's a lot of work to be able to support that. But I definitely do want to support that. So if we get enough players, talking thousands and thousands of players, and that becomes something that we're going to have to do, then I'd be happy to do that. But we'll wait until that point, because the problem with having regional servers is it basically also splits the player base. And from those that have played the game so far, it's currently hosted in the US. No one has complained so far of latency or the game feeling slow or anything like that. And I think that's a testament to how we've built the UI and the UX to make it feel quick and snappy, even though players aren't in the region. Like, the server is in the Western US and I'm in Australia. And so the ping to there is about 250 to 300 milliseconds. And the way I sort of built the UI, it feels like local development. It feels really quick, right? And so that's the ideal. But we'll see what happens when lots of players start playing and we start to see those things sort of back up. Okay, so a little bit of things I forgot about this slide. So all the stuff that we just talked about on social features, I think I've covered everything there. So that's all good and well. So let's move on to demo time. So let's move away from the presentation, get away from the demo. Hey, go back. Hang on. I've lost my thing now. There we go. That's definitely not the demo screen. So let's go back. There we go. Okay, cool. So before I go any further, actually, let's just quickly check the stream, see if there's any other questions. Addy asks, would donations help with development? Look, I mean, as good as donations would be and as nice as it would be, it doesn't really help. I'm a single developer with JWTC helping as well. JWTC's been on the project now, I think, probably a year. Actually, maybe not quite long. I can't remember. June, if you see this and you want to respond on the in the chat or on Discord, that'd be great. I can't exactly remember. But I found June through Tabletop Gaming. So he was building an application called Legion Builder for the new Epic game that Games Workshop built. And so I basically helped him out with that a little bit. So, hey, do you want some help on this? Blah, blah, blah. And really liked his attitude and approach. Even though he's a junior engineer, just picks things up really quickly. And just has a really good sort of approach and headspace for development. So he joined, I think, last year. So coming back to your question, look, donations are great, but money isn't really the issue. Money is time and availability and time away from basically real life commitments, that sort of stuff is the main problem when it comes to developing things. So I basically get stints of development. So leading up to the last alpha test, I think I had like a good 6 weeks of just like hardcore work. So full-time job, and then basically spending 3-4 hours a night working on the game, and then basically as much of the weekend as I could until my son arrived. And then once my son arrived, it was, a bit harder to get that time to myself to work on that. So, there's a lot less time now. So, so money won't really help as good as it will be. It's really just about sort of finding the time to kind of get there. So, okay, so let's move on with this. So a bit of a demo time now. So I actually haven't joined one of these galaxies yet. I've set up a new account for this. So I wanted to just stay on the screen for a second because there's a few things here that some players probably haven't seen yet. So I think everybody's sort of seen at least one of these two images. So Luna is the galaxy that we've been testing with for some time now. And the intention is that Soluna will be the PvE galaxy. So what that means is that there will be no player versus player combat, but there will certainly be engagements and combat versus the various NPC factions in the universe, or in the galaxy, I should say. But this is really for players that want a bit more of a relaxed experience, right? So you can focus on your empire management. You'll get attacked occasionally from the NPC factions, and hopefully we can weight it so that the NPC factions are sort of their fleets are somewhat similar to yours, to provide some challenge there, because players are going to want that. But for the rating stuff, relatively light. And then Ephides is going to be the PvE VP galaxy, meaning that there will be PvE components, but there's also going to be a PvP component as well. And this is really what I've been talking about most when it comes to the various articles around PvP. So there'll be PvP protections in place. So, you're not going to have super powerful players just attacking low-level players. You'll have secure space versus hostile space. So if you've played something like EVE Online, you've got areas of the galaxy which are, really safe. You're not going to be attacked. And then sort of as you get further and further away from safe zones, it gets more and more risky, right? So Ephetes will be a very similar sort of thing in that respect. So that players will basically set up in secure space. Your homeworld will be in secure space. But then as you sort of move out further and further away from your homeworld, around the galaxy, you'll enter more and more hostile space. And that's where you can be attacked and taken out. One thing to point out here is that colonies generally, in both of these galaxies, are fairly safe. Even when you're being attacked, like they can't be destroyed. They can just basically be set back. Daemonis, however, is an entirely different beast. So I've been playing with the concept of a hardcore galaxy, and what that means essentially is that there's no player protections. Your colonies can be destroyed. It's basically, dog eats dog sort of universe. So it's for those that really want a pretty serious challenge, where you can lose essentially everything, right? So if you think hardcore in any other game, once your character dies, that's it, it's over. Same with Daemonis, right? So the idea there is that just like the other galaxies, you'll play for a season, and the top dogs at the top will get their sort of rankings and whatever else other rewards we sort of figure out in the end. But essentially, there will be the 3 types of galaxies you'll be able to play. And these, I don't think we'll be launching with hardcore to start with. We'll do Saluna and Ephetes to begin with, and then Daemonis will come later. Basically, once players start to get a feel for the game, right, and understand how it works, then maybe they want to start trying this something. Try their hand at something that's maybe a little bit more hardcore. Hey Matthew, welcome. Good to see you. No, I don't want dictation. Go away. Okay, cool. So let's join. Actually, what I want to do here is let's join Ephetes because there's something I want to show you all as well. So, actually, before we do that, let me go back. Let's go back to the Galaxy List page, and I'll join Saluna as well. So I mentioned in one of the, I think it was in the last article, actually, I talked about these sort of little Easter eggs within the game's development. And I want to basically show one of them to you now. So if you look at Saluna has a particular color scheme, right? So the idea here is that because Saluna is a PvE galaxy, it's probably be a little bit more relaxed, a bit easier going. So there's a lot of beautiful artwork that's lots of blues and greens, cyan, teal, that sort of thing in there, including the interface. The interface has these sort of blues and greens. Well, you're not just meant to see that yet. Sorry, that's a system screen. So you've got these sort of blues and greens, very chilled, relaxed, that sort of thing. If we go to Ephetes, even from the galaxy, you can see there's like purples and oranges, a bit of teal there in the galaxy image. When you look at the UI, there's now lots of sort of purples and oranges and that sort of thing, right? And this is, throughout the entire UI. So the UI has all of these things, right? Now, if we go to Daemonis, I haven't created an account on this one yet either, so we'll do that. You join Daemonis. And it's a totally different beast, right? So we've got oranges and reds. The background image is much more sort of, shall we say, aggressive. And there's a few different reasons for this. The first is that it makes it extremely clear, even if you're not aware of the galaxy that you're currently playing on, which will be shown somewhere on this interface in the future, just by looking at the UI, you know that you're in a particular type of galaxy, right? And the intention here is this will change also depending on the security or the hostility of the sector that you're in, the galaxy you're in. So if you're in sort of high hostility sectors, it'll show up as oranges and reds for a lot of these things rather than blues and greens. Whereas when you're in safe space, it's sort of more calmer colors. So that's that. So the kind of details we're sort of giving to the game to make it clearer to players sort of what galaxy they're on, as well as what they kind of expect from the game itself. So let's go back to Saluna again, and we'll start going through some of these things. Actually, I don't know what the galaxy speed is in this one. Let's have a quick look. So let's build some stuff here. So this is our new colony. Let's build a manufacturer over here. Get that going. I think this might be a 1-to-1 galaxy, meaning that it's sort of classic mode speed. I can tell that from the 7 seconds. If I have a look here, Yes, it's 30 minutes for the upgrade. So let's go to the... I forgot to change the galaxy speeds before we started this, which is my mistake. If that's the case, I might have to do a quick change in the back end. That's 3 seconds, 12 minutes. Let's check Daemonis. Daemonis, I think, might be faster. Otherwise, yeah, I'll just do a quick update. Yeah, this is a bit better. So this is 2 seconds, 6 minutes. Well, that's probably still a bit too slow. So let me just change something here quickly. I am going to go to the admin and change things. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. Let's have a quick look. No, you can't call. Yeah, so the screen's black. So just give me a moment. I'm going to change the galaxy speed of one of the galaxies. Let's go with Daemonis because I like the UI at the moment. Oh, no, it's actually 10x at the moment. Okay, cool. So let's go back. So let's stay on Daemonis for the time being, and we'll go through a few of these things. So let's build a manufactory. Oh, this one doesn't have a... Oh, damn, this one doesn't have a materials deposit, so that's going to make things a bit more difficult. Sorry, I should have set this up before we got started. Yeah, let me change the galaxy speed of one of the other ones. So I know you can see a black screen at the moment, so I apologize for that. We'll change your feedies to do that. So the problem is, like, I've updated all of the data now to basically be much closer to what we'll expect endgame, which means a lot of things are slowed down, which makes it a bit harder to test. Oh, that's all my notifications coming through. Okay, so let's do this one. So manufactory. Yeah, okay, so this one's now been set a bit faster. We'll set up a materials deposit over here. On the extractor over here. Yeah, I'll take a second. Yeah, it's still going to take... I'm not going to show everything, which is a bit unfortunate. Let's see how far we go. I basically just want to show off the new research tech. So that's an installation field. So we'll set up a solar farm on that one. That was ready to go. So you can see all the colors now are sort of set to the current galaxy, right? If I colonized Uranus, would it have a more brown color scheme? No, probably not, Addy. Uranus isn't going to exist in this galaxy. I apologize. Okay, so one thing many players probably haven't seen is this one here. So this icon actually means polonium. So that's a polonium deposit on this particular planet. I don't know why I'm getting so many of these. Shouldn't be this many. Oh, whatever. We'll let that go through. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I don't know why it's done that. Maybe because I started up in the other galaxies, which is probably a bug I need to fix. So yeah, I think that might be the case. I sort of left the screen to do that. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so now we've got a manufactory, we've got the solar farm set up, and we've got the extractor set up. So before I go any further, I want to point out something here as well. So, you know, I talked before about the sort of the updated UI. So if you guys saw my other devlogs, you probably would have seen that this was a fair bit, this whole screen is a bit more restricted, is a bit smaller. The overall screen size is actually exactly the same. So this is still a 1080p resolution sitting in the middle here. But we had sort of like this boxed in area. So you had like a thing over on the left here with some other details. Over on the right, you had this other thing. And then sort of when you click stuff, like, you know, if I click this building, it would open up over here. The reason why I originally did that is because I couldn't do this sort of nice, beautiful open panel thing that I was doing, that I've got in place now. I was just finding it too difficult, and I was getting in the way of progress for the other sort of underlying architecture that we were building, so I just didn't bother with it. So we threw in that right side panel. But this was always the intention. This is always sort of the experience I wanted to have. So, you know, you select a hex, it shows the hexes around it, it highlights them, it shows a beautiful panel there with the thing that you're working on, or that you're looking at, you know, with all the details and stuff here as well. And so with the feedback I got from the last test phase, I'm like, all right, time to do this properly. Let's make it nice and clean and make the UI the way I wanted to make it to begin with. And so that's what we've done. So this is always the intention, is kind of have this sort of nice flowing panels. So I spent a week just building the architecture to support this piece, and it now supports a lot of the other features in the game, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now we've got a manufactory, solar farm, as well as the extractor. So let's now build a laboratory so we can start doing some research. That'll take 18 seconds. While doing that, cheers. Always nerve-wracking when you're demoing stuff. So yeah, so this is now using sort of real-world timing, but the galaxy's been sped up 10x. So if you think about this from a sort of classic mode perspective, which sort of be the main game mode, because like I said, like, you know, a lot of these A lot of these sort of older games that Halcyon Online is heavily inspired by were very slow games, right? Now, you'd build a structure and it'd take 4 hours, 5 hours to do. You'd wait for that notification, whatever, the email you got, or an SMS. Some games had SMS going. Then you would... There's definitely a bug here. There shouldn't be this many notifications. I'm not sure exactly what happened, so let's get rid of these. So Halcyon Online derives its timing from those sort of older games. But we'll have faster galaxies for those players that want to basically play Galaxy over a weekend or something like that. They're just playing for the whole weekend, trying to do as good as they can. But the classic mode will be played over 3 months. So one galaxy will be alive for 3 months, and so the timing is sort of stretched out to fill that space. Also, one thing to bear in mind here also is that as you get more and more colonies, you're going to want that space. You're going to want those timings to be longer, just so you can do things. Once you've kind of got 10, 12 or more colonies, if all these buildings take a few seconds to build, you just won't be able to keep up with it. There's too many things going on. So I think the classic mode and the classic timing will actually serve itself quite well once you sort of get into the second era and above, because that's when you start to have multiple colonies. There's a lot more things for you to manage. And so having a bit of breathing space is probably going to be a good thing. But the idea here is that you sort of log on to the game 2 or 3 times a day, maybe less depending on where you're at in the game, and then you sort of come back and you complete some things, right? So, and that's what the notification system is for. So we've now got desktop notifications in place. I haven't got it here at the moment enabled because I am logged onto the game, so I'm not going to see them. But if I log off the game and I sort of queue some things up when they finish, if you've got push notifications enabled, for example, so if I go to my account settings here and then go to notifications, you can now receive push notifications. So when you're offline, but let's say you're still in front of the PC, but you haven't, or your Mac, that's a bug, but you don't have the game open, you'll see a push notification pop up on your desktop. And same on mobile. You'll get a push notification if you're not in front of the browser, which is probably more likely on mobile. Okay, so that's that. So we've got the laboratory set up. So now we're going to set up one of the 2 wards. So set up the infrastructure ward first. That allows us to basically expand the capabilities of construction and that sort of thing for the colony. So that'll take us about a minute. Yeah, there's definitely something wrong going on here. I don't know what's going on. There's definitely a bug here. See? Infrastructure ward. I don't know what's going on there. There's definitely a bug that's been introduced recently. So we'll have to fix that one up. So you would never see this many notifications. You'll see 1 if the project has been queued, and then you'll see 1 when it's finished. If you want those notifications, right? If you don't want those notifications, you can disable them, and it's absolutely fine. Okay, cool. So who else have we got? We've got just a couple watching at the moment. That's absolutely fine. If you've got any questions, now's a good time, seeing as we're waiting for stuff. Once we're done with that, we're going to open up the research piece over here, and we'll start going through some of the research things that we've been... So you can see here, I can't do anything yet because I haven't created I haven't constructed the research wards necessary to be able to do these sorts of things. But once they're enabled, then I can go into these and start doing them. But before we do that, yes, it's just completed. Yes, it's showing up twice. You know what? I'm wondering if maybe I've got something running twice, because that would make sense. No, it doesn't look like it. Okay, whatever. Still coming through. That's annoying. Still coming through. Go away. Okay, let's do the exploration ward as well, just so we can show that off a bit later. So I'll take 1.5 minutes to complete. All right, let's go to research. It's just 7 times. What is going on here? June, what have we done? We've broken something for sure. Okay, infrastructure. So now that we've created the infrastructure ward, we've got a couple of options here. So I talked about this a little bit in the last demo, but essentially the way research works is the more research that you execute, the more levels you can actually go down. So let's say, for example, I research these 2. I'd then be able to go down to research level 3. I call it research depth at the moment. So the reason why I mention that is because it might look like there's a fairly linear way to go about this, but as you unlock more and more research or research more technologies, more and more options become available to you. So you don't have to go the next level down after that. It makes sense to in some cases, like if you're focusing on resources, for example, that we might do here, it makes sort of sense to focus on resource production or whatever first. But you don't have to. You might do a 2 there. Maybe you want to go down towards, maybe into exploration. Maybe start doing, hang on, this isn't done yet. Should be done any minute. Almost done. We've got another 25 seconds to go. Yeah, maybe the next thing you want to do is start researching exploration stuff, doing probes and that sort of thing. So it just depends on what your focus is. So let's do advanced manufacturing, because that then gives us assembly plants, although that's going to take six minutes, unfortunately, so we may not be able to show that. But the main thing I want to demo here is actually just the research and technology, right? So as we research things, more and more things get, man, this is so annoying, go away. Definitely got to fix this one. This will be my next bug fix for sure. Although it could be a local development issue. I don't know. But the idea is I just want to basically show off research. So we've just finished exploration, looks like. Yeah, I just saw it there. So the exploration water is now completed. You can now also see, which we implemented during the last test phase, is the tier of the building. So this little, like, I don't know if you can see my mouse actually, but down the bottom right of these tiles, you can see their tier. So if I upgrade one of those, this one will take a minute. Let's do that. So let's upgrade this one. You'll see that actually changes to a 2 eventually. Let's go to research. We'll go to exploration now as well. So in exploration, there's a little bit there, but like I said, most of the stuff is just for the first era. So these next ones here, so radiation shielding, cryogenic chambers, and deep space habitats. So excuse me. That's all for colonization. That's all for setting up a colonization piece, right? The other ones here, so we've got this one, satellites, resource detection, and monitoring. This is all about setting up your satellites or probes that you might send to other planets. Then you've got space flight and a few other things here. I think under infrastructure is where we do the observatory stuff. I can't remember. It's been a little while since I got to it. Let's have a look. So if we go to infrastructure, and then let's say we wanted to build an observatory here. So at the moment, when you select a hex, it'll only show you what's available and affordable. If you want to change that, you basically tick these off, and you can see here we can build a depository eventually, a launch pad, storage cells, extractor, blah, 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 observatory. So observatory has some dependencies here. So we've done the exploration mode. We just need to research optical systems, basically. And optical systems, I think, is in exploration. Where is it? Where's it gone? Oh, there it is. Optical systems. There. Right. So I can't research at the moment because we're researching another piece. But once you've done optical systems, then you can set up an observatory. So, yeah, even early game, I've already found myself doing this. Is like, do I want to focus on getting the observatory up quickly so that I can start scanning systems as soon as possible, or do I want to focus on getting my resource production up as fast as possible so that I'm doing other things. So. And I don't have the answer to that. It's questions I've been asking myself, which I think is actually really cool, right? There's some decision making that needs to happen even this early on when we've only created a few things, right? So I think it depends, what players sort of want to focus on and where they're going. Observing systems takes time, just like any other thing, like construction and production and that sort of stuff. So maybe it's something you want to set up pretty quickly. I don't know yet. I don't know the answer to that one yet. So let's go back to our infrastructure. Let's see where we're at with this one. We've now completed the solar farm, so that's at tier 2, right? Let's now get, where's our research at for? Actually, you know what I can do? I can go back to the colony. I forgot about this. The game development is already getting away from me. So when you're on the colony screen, it gives you an overview of the colony. The information here is relatively bare bones at the moment, but you've got advanced manufacturing is what we're researching. And then if we construct things, it shows up there as well. So let's do that straight away. Let's get we can't do observatory yet. So let's do, maybe upgrade the manufactory because that gives us faster construction. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Then we go back to the colony. Then you can see that there, right? So you see the details there. Yeah, so it shows you basically everything that's happening on the colony. So, if you're producing spacecraft, it'll show up here as well. If you've got, incoming hostile fleets, that'll show up. It'll all be available here. And then you've got all these sorts of things as well. So if you haven't seen the previous devlogs, you can see here, like, these are all the various effects and stuff that are in effect on the colony. So we've got solar energy output multiplier. One of them is coming from the tier 1 solar farm, and the other 2 points is coming from the tier 2 solar farm, which is both the same thing, right? We've only got one solar farm at the moment here. It's at tier 2. So one of the things I'm currently working on is bringing this stuff together for the same structure. Like, it shouldn't matter that these are 2 separate tiers, right? You're like, all right, I've got, the energy output multiplier coming from the solar farm at tier 2. It shouldn't really matter what the different tier effects are currently. But this is some of the information that you'll see, and we're also working on providing more information for the resource piece as well. But yeah, so let's go to research. I think we've still got a little ways to go on assembly plant stuff. Yeah, we've still got a few minutes left to go on that one. So, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it I want to show off for today. So if you've got any questions, I'll answer them now. Happy to answer anything that comes up at the moment. But otherwise, yeah, then we can wrap it up. But yeah, I'm getting pretty excited. You know, the game's starting to feel very nice. It's starting to feel really smooth and slick. Yeah, and the available features are just going to grow over the next year, essentially. So, you know, a lot of time was spent basically through 2023 and 2024 building out the underlying architecture for the game and being able to support the actual game features. And I had to do a little bit of a refactor on that earlier this year. But yeah, that took a lot longer than I was expecting. You know, getting all the timings and stuff set up and working properly, all the notifications in place. And you know, unfortunately, 2024 was a bit of a write-off. Fair bit of work still done there, but yeah, just personal reasons. A lot of things going on there. So another thing you can do here basically is you can, I'm not sure if you can see it on the map. Maybe if I unselect that one, you can see it highlighting the. Actually, it's not very well seen. I think it's because of the color selected for this particular galaxy. The purple is very similar to the gray, unfortunately. If I do that, yeah, you can see it's actually highlighting them there. Yeah, I got to do a little bit of fix there. That's not particularly good. Yeah, it's a bit weird that. But anyway, yeah, so you can hover over these. I'll show you the relevant structures. I can select that one to select the manufacturer, for example. So you don't have to, like, if you're still getting used to the various images, which I know does need some fixing to make it clearer, like what's what. You can basically hover over these and select it, right? So if you're getting lost or if you're getting stuck, there's another way to do it as well. Our research just finished, so we can go back to research now. The assembly plant's now completed. The advanced manufacturing has completed, so we can build an assembly plant. We could then go to, for example, here. Maybe we want to start working on our observatory. So research that. That's only going to be 12 seconds, so we could get to the observatory pretty much straight away. I still want to do some cool effects for the research piece. I think the construction looks pretty cool. It's almost like sort of building blocks, right? Sort of working up. Research, I think, needs a little bit more work, though, to make it really nice and sweet. So that's now finished, which means we could build an observatory, but we're still building this manufactory. Next thing I'd probably do actually is probably add an assembly plant, because the assembly plant adds construction queue slots to the colony, meaning that I can queue up construction. So, you know, if I'm not going to be on for the next 12 hours, whatever, queue up a few pieces, and I'll know that I'll be taken care of for me for when I get back. But you can see here, right, so tier 2 takes 24 minutes for an assembly plant. Tier 3 takes an hour and 12 minutes. And this is on the fastest settings. This is a 10x galaxy. So this would actually take in reality closer to a day to, 10 hours, sorry, for an assembly plant at tier 3. So, you know, it's starting to take a fair bit of time at that point in classic mode at 1x speed. And, you know, some of the buildings, some of the structure, like the space station, I think is... The idea for the space station was that it takes about 24 hours to get to the end of the first era, and then second era and beyond starts to take obviously considerably longer depending on the structures that you're building. But that was the goal. So at 1x speed, it takes approximately 24 hours from ground zero to get to a space station, and then you're starting to upgrade buildings. So they obviously take a fair bit more time to upgrade them all. But yeah, 24 hours to basically get off world in classic mode. If we're talking about sort of 10x speed, you're probably looking at closer to 2 to 3 hours maybe total. And then you're basically starting to, you know, sort of scan other systems and finding an appropriate secondary colony, whatever that might be, whatever it is you want to work on. So, yeah. So that's the state of the game at the moment. This is where we're at. Like I said, pretty excited. Things are moving along at a pretty good pace now. So now the underlying architecture is there. And yeah, you know, I think the game's starting to look pretty cool, and I think it looks pretty unique within this, you know, sort of niche subgenre of games. And I think it's only going to get better from here. So you got any questions? None at the moment, so that's it for timing. So thank you everybody for joining in. Great to have you all on board, those that joined. And yeah, watch out for the next update in a few months. Thank you. Ciao. As soon as I can get